Welcome to Brenda Beattie's Brushstrokes, and I'm Brenda Beattie. This channel is all about art. Drawing, painting with acrylics, watercolors, and ink. It has tips and tricks, as well as step-by-step tutorials. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe and press the bell so that you'll be notified each time I create a new video. Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to show you step by step how to do a painting using all 7 of our brushes. This is number 3 in our series, A Beginner's Guide to Watercolor. This is the painting we're going to be doing, and because you're watching this video, I know that you're an artist. How do I know that? Because if you weren't, you'd be watching something else. So since you're here and you're an artist, you better paint with me. Give it a try. It's going to be so much fun. You can do this. Here's my plan for a painting using my brushes. So this is a photograph of the Lookout Trail in Algonquin Park. That's a provincial park in Ontario, where the group of 7 went often to paint. At the top of Lookout Trail, you get this beautiful view, and I thought we'd do a painting of that. And we can use all the brushes that I have over here. And I'm using today a watercolor block. As you can see, it's Arches 140-pound cold press watercolor block. It's glued all around the edges, except for right here where I can take it off when I'm finally finished. I've put masking tape around the edges because I forget and paint all the way to the end every time I use a block if I don't put the masking tape on, which is fine until you go to frame it, and then you lose part of your painting because the matte board will cover the edges. Just the edges. Then you have to decide how much should I take off, etc. When you have a nice border around it, that omits that problem. So the first thing, the first thing I'm going to do is wake up my paints, and I have a spray bottle. And you may notice I have a few more paints on my palette than the ones listed. These paints have been used for other videos or future videos and other paintings that I've done. I have a little arrow beside the ones used in this video, so I will know which ones not to use in the video series, I mean. The first thing I'm going to do is the sky, and I'm going to use my 3/4 inch flat. I wet it. I'm going to use phthalo. I love phthalo and ultramarine. And I have a piece of watercolor paper that I've cut off of, something when I framed it. And I've also got some holes in it. Can you see the holes? So these holes allow me to check. I can, if I want an exact blue, excuse me, I can check by holding it. So I'm going to check the color here. That's pretty dark, but I'm going to use some water on my page first. I'm going to use my bigger brush because my 3/4 inch brush right now has paint on it. So I'm just painting some water across. And I'm painting down to my mountains here. So I've drawn roughly the scene on my page before I started. Then I'm going to add some of this. It's lovely the way it runs over wet paint. And sometimes I like to tip my painting up a little. And a roll of masking tape is perfect because you can just set it underneath and get it at the angle that you want. I'm letting it run wherever it likes. It's very nice cloud effects you can get this way. You can add more water in places. You can sort of direct the effect. I'm just going to take away some of the water on the sides, and then I can tip it back and forth to decide where I want all this paint to go. That is so much fun, don't you think? I think. So that'll be it for our sky for now. And I'm going to mix a color for the foreground, which is rock, but it's really a beautiful burnt sienna yellowy color with some browns in it. We'll start out with burnt sienna over here. I'm going to add some water to the paint just with my spray bottle. And maybe I will put in a little yellow, and I'm really bad at messing up my colors. I'll probably mess up my yellow. Maybe I won't. Then I will test this color and see if it's a color that I want. So I can also use one of these holes to see how it matches. And that's pretty good match. I'm going to paint this on dry paper. The thing is, when it's dry, you will get ridges. So you have to paint fast. What I mean by ridges is where the paint ends. Sometimes we run out of color if we didn't mix enough. And one thing I like about my palette, it has some empty, oh, what are these called? These little spots there. It has some empty spots. So if I want to mix a big amount, I can use one of those wells. I guess they're called wells. Now, because there's some very dark bits in here, I'm just going to add a little of the dark, just straight burnt sienna over top in places. And burnt umber as well. Burnt umber can be granular. What does that mean? That means little spots appear in the paint, and that's exactly what we need here. Now these are a little crimson. Oh, I might have got a bit much there. Now we have purple, all right. But I wanted a little more blue than purple. Wow, look at that color. So, let's see. That's very, very dark. So we'll use a watered down version. But still, it has to be darker than the sky. Yep, it will be. So we'll give this a try. And we can always do another layer over top if it's not dark enough, but if we get too dark, it's very hard to go lighter. I'm going to go around the tree trunks for this one. In our next lesson, we'll learn about masking. So I'm holding the paintbrush quite close to the ferrule, which is the middle part, because I have more control over it. I don't want the hills to look too flat. And mountains that are nearer are darker. So you can get a nice progression by changing the value. Value? What's value? That's the dark or the lightness of a color. So the ones in the foreground have a darker value. Some people talk about high and low values, but I find that confusing, so I use the words light and dark. I hadn't planned on doing that, but I just couldn't resist. For our foreground now, we're going to wait for a little bit and let those mountains dry. I'm not in the habit of using the hairdryer because when you're using masking, if you get the hairdryer too close to the masking, you can melt that masking right into the paper and never get it out and ruin your whole painting. You can also blow the paint around if you get it too close or there's deep puddles. And I just prefer to let it dry on its own. Sometimes that's a little risky. So now I'm going to use, and my yellow has got corrupted here, I'm just going to clean it up a bit. There's some gamboge somehow got in with the Hansa yellow. Hansa yellow is a very staining color. Some colors are staining, and you can sort of tell by looking at my palette which ones are staining. You can tell Phthalo has stained this and this and this, even though that's cobalt over there. And Hansa yellow has stained here, and this part of the palette is stained with Hansa yellow. So those are two staining. Any of the Phthalos are quite staining. Staining means you can't, if you want to pick it up or scrape it off the paper, it will always stain the paper. So I'm going to use this beautiful Hansa yellow. And do it what we call an underpainting. I need lots of water here. This yellow will shine through all the other colors. And because it's a staining color, it will stay on the paper. It's amazing. And it will, because watercolors are transparent, it will shine through to a certain extent, because you'll be able to see the yellow through the other colors that I'm going to put over top of it. I'm going to mix up some greens now. I'll be using sap green, and I'm going to put it in with this yellow. Not sure how that got on my palette. I think it may have just, I splashed it on by accident. It's got some gamboge in it. That gives me a nice color. Parts of this are still wet and parts are dry. And I'm going to add a little red, a little alizarin crimson to it. And I'm really messing up my palette here. Now I have an orange. Just tap it in a few places. Because it's autumn in this picture, now we do have some very orange parts of this. Especially in here. I'm going to put more trees over top when I'm done here. When it's dry, I'm just going to run this right up to the edge. And put a little green in there as well. I think it needs a little dark in places up here. Quite amazing the way the paint just it does its own thing and it's painting for me, it feels like. That's all I'm going to do for that part right now. I'm going to work on the trees next. And I'm going to use this number 6 again. And I'm going to use burnt sienna. Maybe a little more water in there. Straight burnt sienna. It's lovely. And I'm going to run it right down these 2 trees. Right through the sky. You do see exactly where the sky ended. You can also see a pencil line right there, which is okay. It's going to be a branch. We'll go over it a couple of times. And the next one, it's kind of curved a bit. Tree trunks aren't straight up and down, always. Sometimes they are. Then it gets bigger at the bottom, so just put a little more pressure on the brush when we get to the bottom. I'm going to let that dry for a minute. There was some sort of sticks and stuff along the bottom. And I'll darken this a little bit here. These are just finishing touches. Where did it come? And I think that's it. Oh, maybe that looks a little strange here. Maybe it does. I think that's all right. Maybe a few little marks around here. And there we have it. Well, it looks a lot different than our photo, but our photo is, as I said, just a reference. Just an inspiration spot. I'm going to take off the masking tape now. We'll just see what this looks like. That's so cool. It's like opening a present. There, doesn't that look a lot different without the masking tape? Lay it flat, and there we go. There's our painting. That's a lot of fun. I'm just going to use a palette knife now to remove the painting from the block, just to show you how I do it. Whoops. I just knocked the camera. Sorry about that. And there we go, upside down. There's my painting.